Hello everybody. I recently posted a video where I cleaned my brushes on camera, and I got a lot of questions to actually talk about my brush collection and talk about the kinds of brushes that I use, which brands I use. I thought it was quite evident from the video, but I can run you through the brushes that I have in my collection, and I will be happy to do so because I think that can be quite useful. I've sorted them into brands, and I've realized that Real Techniques is probably the brand that I buy from the most. But I have some duds and brushes that I don't use from them as well, and I do think it could be useful to sort of go through that and let you know which ones I think are worthwhile. Let's start with the brushes from various firms that I don't have a lot of. So for instance, this guy, Nude by Nature sort of buffer slash blunt cut brush. It's reasonably thick. It's not super dense, but it's reasonably dense, and that's a brush that is easy to travel with. It has a short handle. I do recommend this brush. This is pretty good. It's synthetic and it's meant to buff in powder foundation. This is what I use it for. It's easy to travel with, and in a pinch you can use it in a lot of different ways, sort of creating different shapes. But I mean, I don't think it's a necessity, but I think it's a nice touch. It's a nice brush. My only kabuki that I still have is this one because I really love the shape and the quality. This is from Elizabeth Arden. I'm not sure if they still sell it, but I'm sure they sell something similar. This kabuki is the best because it's very soft. Doesn't lose the bristles. That's a must do for me. If it loses any bristles at all, or I find any bristles on my face, it's over. The brush, no matter what it is gone. I hate bristles on face, so this one does not lose any bristles. It's extremely soft, and please pay attention to the actual shape. The shape of it is very important because although there's a lot of surface area that you can say bronze with, or apply loose powder foundation with, or press powder foundation, whatever, you can really customize what you do with it because you can use the edge to really apply in a pretty pointed way your makeup, and then sort of buff it out with a thicker side. So this is really multi-purpose for me because it's easy to, because it's very easy to modify what you do with it depending on which angle of the brush you use. Plus it's tiny and cute and really nice. This is a huge regret because that's a terrible brush. I used to really like it because I like the idea of it, and it's natural bristles, which are not terrible in quality. I think this is goat hair. It does lose occasional bristles, but not that many, not enough to like set me off. And I really love the idea of having this kind of brush to just sort of quickly apply, say, a powder foundation, and then you turn it and you do some chiseling, and then you turn it again and you do some blush. So the idea of it, the fact that it's so multi-use and you have, again, multiple surfaces to work with, I like, but the execution is not there. Becca did not do well with releasing this brush, and they have released this one I think a couple of times as a limited edition, so they might again. I'm here to warn you that this is not fantastic quality. The bristles are not terrible, but the handle is super cheaply made, and also it's kind of cracking. I purchased it online, so I couldn't really like assess the quality of the handle in person. So I bought it from Becca online, but I mean, this is kind of cracking, and that's kind of gross. This was not a cheap brush, so it's a little bit upsetting. I'm sure I'll be decluttering it fairly soon. I like the shape. I wish more companies came out with this kind of a shape, but maybe in better quality of a handle because it's frankly quite annoying. The only brush I have from Makeup Forever is this one, and I love it, and I should buy more from Makeup Forever. This is 148 straight and wavy. This is a small dual fiber brush, and this brush helped me discover years ago. This is many years old, and as you can see, the writing is still on the handle. It's fantastic quality brush. It's never lost a single bristle. And what I have to say is that this is the brush that helped me discover the fact that I really love dual fiber brushes. Totally recommend the entire range. I think they have fabulous brushes. I should pick up more from them. I just haven't yet. I only have one brush from Navi. And this is an amazing liner brush. I love that the handle is not ultra long, so you have lots of control. It's just long enough. I really like using it with cream or liquid liners. It's really good. Much, much better, I have to say, than its sister from Real Techniques. But Navi is not very popular. Real Techniques is easy to find. And you can get by with this Real Techniques one. It's not bad. Navi one is significantly better. So if you have your eye on a Navi liner brush, pick it up for sure. We have WATIER liner brush. This is a very skinny liner brush, as you can see, and I do enjoy using it for lining my eyes with shadow. No biggie there. I think you can find that basically anywhere. It's not that special. And then an Yves Rocher brush. I used to have two of those, but one became quite scratchy. This one is on the way there as well. Because the bristles are natural bristles, they tend to, like hair do, if it's not good quality, it's gonna break and create little pokey bits. So as it gets older and it breaks a little bit and sheds a little bit, it becomes less usable because the quality of Yves Rocher brushes are not fantastic. So I would say skip on the Yves Rocher brushes. Maybe synthetic ones behave better, but these natural bristle ones really don't hold up all that well. I think I've used them for maybe 3 years or so, and one of them is just gone now. I've decluttered it because it was started to get quite pokey. This one is probably going to be gone within the next year. Let's move on to brushes that I actually have multiples of. I have to share with you the Smashbox brushes, because if you're looking at natural bristle brushes, Smashbox actually do a very, very good job for the money. So here I have number 16, and this is a blush brush. Basically, you can use it for any powder product, and it's a fantastic, fantastic quality, and they're holding up beautifully. I've had both of those for maybe 5 years, and they're still in perfect shape. This one's one of my favorites. It's number 3. And this one, I like to apply base color, like a cream color, something like that. Or I like to highlight under the brow. I think for both purposes, it's beautiful. It's fantastic quality, really happy with them. They're holding up great. Recommend Smashbox. Then we have Hakuhodo, probably the highest end brushes, excluding one of the Chanel brushes I own in my collection, and I'm very happy with the ones I have. That being said, I did declutter a bunch of them, so I wasn't happy with every brush I bought from Hakuhodo. My thought is to try the Wayne Goss brushes, because those apparently are magical and beautiful, and I will try them probably in the coming year. I'll report back on what I think about them. With Hakuhodo brushes, unfortunately, the names did rub off the handles, so I have no idea what the names of these brushes are. But I can run through the shapes, and you can probably match them up to what they're selling online. I ordered them, so I didn't choose them in person, obviously. I do think it's worthwhile, but I think you need to make sure that what you're ordering is high quality. There are some brushes that I was really unhappy with, mainly the Japanese style brushes with a coil around. Did not like any of those. So this is a very loose powder brush, which I enjoy tremendously to use with any kind of powder products. I think it's beautiful. It's really, really pretty. It applies a very sheer amount of powder, so this is for those of you who are looking for a sheer application. And the same can be said about, well, the same shape, really. This is my favorite shape, guys. You'll see this shape repeated throughout my collection among my absolute favorite brushes. This is the shape I go for, slightly tapered, slightly loose brush. And this one is my favorite highlighter brush. So every highlighter brush ever is compared to this one. It's beautiful. Today I used it, as you can see, to apply highlighter. One of my absolute favorites. Then we have a flat brush. This is all natural bristle brushes, to be fair. I believe these are squirrel hair. So if you're cruelty free and don't use natural hair in your makeup brushes, these are not for you, but they are beautiful quality. If you're interested, then you should know that they're really, really nice. So this one is just like a flat squirrel haired brush, very, very nice and soft. A pencil brush from Blue Squirrel, I think. It's very, very nice and soft as well. And a blending brush. This is my favorite blending brush. I've forgotten it at my friend's place in Germany before, and she kindly brought it over back here this year. I went to her to be a bridesmaid at her wedding a couple of years ago, and I forgot it at her place when I was doing her makeup. And you can see this is the only brush that actually retained the engraving, because, well, obviously it hasn't been used in in 2 years, and these all have. However, they all held up very, very nicely. I have no complaints about the quality. Then I have two from LISE WATIER. I think barring the fact that, you know, Hakuhodo you can order online, but you can't touch them. These, if you live in Canada, can be found to actually be felt and touched. These are both natural bristle brushes. This is definition brush, and you can see the writing is still on, so the engraving is really nice. They really pay attention to quality. The quality of this brush is absolutely no worse than the quality of my Hakuhodo brush. This one's a little bit more worn and a little bit fluffier shaped, but they both have really, really, really nice fibers. And same can be said about this one. This is angular brush. This one I can use for basically anything to do with powder application. I can really apply powder if I want. I can really do bronzing. I can do sculpting. I can do pinpoint application of color on the cheeks. I can use the tip to highlight. Really, this shape is very, very easy to use. If it wasn't for this shape being my absolute favorite, this shape would be. So also a fantastic, fantastic cut for a brush, and the quality is there. The fibers are sturdy, and I've washed this numerous times and it's still holding up. We're going to hit the biggest category, which now that I'm thinking and filming, I should have done as a total separate video. The Real Techniques brushes, which ones I recommend and which ones I do not, and why. And I have a ton of Real Techniques brushes because these are super worth your money kind of brushes. They're not necessarily all my favorite, but I have a few favorites that I absolutely would endorse and some that I don't think are worth the hype. First and foremost, there's this big powder brush. This is good for people who really love a big brush and love to just distribute powder all over their face in one go. So for you guys, this might be actually quite good because it's sort of medium in density, which is what you want, and it's quite large in surface area. So you can cover a lot of area with this guy. For me, I like a more pointed application. So for instance, if I want to just apply powder under my eyes and around my nose, I can't with this. It automatically will hit so much area. So I do use this for bronzer, for like a diffuse blown out bronzer application. You can do that. Not my favorite. I wouldn't buy it again necessarily for me, but I don't think it's a bad brush. None of these are bad brushes, but I'll just tell you which ones are my favorites. And then I have a couple of styles of dual fibers, and I have two of each because these are identical. I've obviously liked it enough to purchase it. Like I said, I really like dual fiber brushes. These guys I discovered first, and it's called Sculpting Brush. And these are actually quite a nice little sculpting brush. My preference is to use them for foundation application. I do like the small surface area. I don't like a huge brush for foundation application, so these work really well for me. They're probably my preferred way to apply foundation if I'm applying foundation with brushes. These are for anything. So out of these two, I really would recommend these. It is a dual fiber contour brush. You can apply foundation with them. This is more of a buffing style. This is more of a painting on style application, depending on what you like. And honestly, these guys are just really great for cream products. So if you are a lover of cream products, which I am, I do suggest that you use the dual fiber contour brushes to go ahead and give you this really, really great diffused application of cream products. This is what they can do. They can most certainly buff out like your concealer if that's what you wanted to do. They can do cream contour. You can do bronzer, but you know, maybe something bigger for the bronzer. You can certainly do cream blush application. You can do highlight application. These are really, really great for cream products. Then I have a couple of my favorite kind of shape brush, as you can tell, slightly tapered. And these are not the same brush, but they do kind of the same thing. We have the contour and the setting brush. Contour is a little bit denser, setting is a little bit fluffier, but by no means fluffy. This is medium density to me. So setting brush is very good for sort of applying pointed powder. Contour is really good for cream contouring, which I concur. It's true, I've tried it, but both of those for me really go to do the highlight. For me, these kinds of brushes are highlighter friendly. And I like to apply highlighter. I like to apply a lot of things with my fingers, but if I'm using a brush to apply highlighter, it's probably one of these two, if we're talking about the Real Techniques ones. And I would probably skip on the contour and go just for the setting one, because I think this has more uses and is more multifunctional. So this setting one would be my recommendation. The contour one, if you're doing a lot of contouring, can help you out for sure. Then a few brushes that are sort of classic flat paddle brushes. This one I wouldn't recommend at all. This came in some kind of a kit and I'm looking to get rid of it. This is a concealer brush. Honestly, I do prefer applying concealer with my fingertips, but if you like a flat brush for a concealer, this is the right shape and the right size. So I don't think it's bad. None of these are terrible because they are well-made brushes, but I don't think this is the most multifunctional brush. And for me, multifunctionality is important because I prefer to use the same brush for multiple things. These are quite good for flat paddle brushes. I do enjoy application with flat paddle brushes for medium coverage foundations and up. Out of the two, I think this tapered foundation brush is the denser brush. So if you like a denser brush, tapered foundation brush is pretty good. And Essential foundation brush is my preferred one, mostly because it isn't as dense. It's a little bit more, has a little bit more give, but mostly because it is just such a nice little shape. It's more pointed. So honestly, I don't see the utility of this, because if you have already some kind of a pointed foundation brush, you're going to be able to go after your concealer, no problem. You won't need the separate concealer brush. So just buy this one. I don't know if it comes separate. My belief is that it comes in some kind of set. This one's okay, but only for lovers of very dense brushes. Then we have a couple more brushes that do kind of the same thing. They're not necessarily my favorites, but if you like a buffing foundation brush, they're pretty good. One is called the buffing brush. I would recommend for those of you who wear heavier coverage of a powder foundation, this is what that would be good for, applying powder foundations when you want a heavier coverage. I don't tend to prefer a very heavy coverage with my mineral foundations, for instance. I use something else. I'll show you what. And this is Expert Face Brush. I think this is a little bit more multifunctional, so you can use it for a lot of different uses just because of the shape. You can apply foundation all over the face. You can do cream products on the cheeks. It's small enough that you can do that. It's not my preferred way of application, but the Expert Face Brush is multifunctional. If you like a dense brush, it's pretty dense. The brushes that I do like a little bit more for applying my foundation are these two, and I prefer them over the Expert Face Brush. I think they all do the same thing, but I think these ones are just better, which is why I have two and only one of these. So density, yes, they're all quite dense. This one's clearly currently is in use. They're all quite dense. All about the same density, honestly, but the shape of these guys is just superior. So what you get here is you get the kind of application with which you can kind of stipple the foundation in, and then because of the different kind of shape, you can certainly manipulate the brush to have more precision in application or blow it out or whatever, but really these I use for stippling. These are sculpting brushes, just in case I didn't mention it before. Sculpting brushes I think are quite good if you do like that dense brush application because of their shape. I think the shape really makes a difference here. My very favorite brush is from Real Techniques, and this one's currently being in use. This one's being recently washed. If you watched the washing video, that's when I washed them. These are blush brushes. I think these are some of the most universally easy to use multifunctional brushes that the Real Techniques company makes. And honestly, these are really the brushes that are sold in singleton, like one per package, and I would recommend buying these really over any other brush in their collection. I think these are the most useful. So mostly because you can powder with them, and they're tapered enough to create a good shape to be able to powder. You can dip the very tip of the brush and be able to contour fairly precisely. You can bronze with a larger surface area. You can certainly apply and diffuse out blush with it. So this is a really, really useful little brush. Probably my very favorite out of all of the Real Techniques brushes out there, mostly because the quality of them is really quite similar between each other, but the shape is really what makes a difference. So this is medium density on a looser side, probably brush that has a really, really, really great shape. This guy I really do like quite a bit, and this is their dual fiber face brush. It's probably because, again, it's the same kind of shape that I like. It's a tapered shape, and this is a dual fiber, so it can pick up some products on the bristles, deposit it, and then you use the rest of the brush to blend. Easy to use. Again, you can use it for anything from powder to contour to bronzer to blush. Maybe not highlighter again. Well, maybe you could apply a bit of, if it's really intense highlighter, but this is really good. Then we have cheek brush. Cheek brush does kind of the same thing for me as these sculpting brushes do. It's a similar sort of shape, but if you see sculpting brushes, they're much more dense than the cheek brush. So cheek brush I actually really enjoy for a more diffuse application. Cheek brush is something I just discovered. I don't believe that this is as easy to find as the sculpting ones. If I had to pick which ones I like better, I like the cheek brush better because it gives you a lot more control with layering, because the application is still, it's fairly dense, but it's not as dense as the contour brushes. And with this kind of density, it's easy to work with creams or powders. These ones really work best with creams, honestly, because powders, it just picks up too much. It's just too dense. And this one is a little bit easier to use. So out of those, I would really recommend the cheek brush over the contour brush. We have a couple of these guys. These are really the brushes that I do recommend for powder foundation. Unless you want a really dense application, you will do well with a buffing brush because it is denser and will pick up more. These guys are a bit softer and a bit looser, but still have this buffing quality. So you can pick up your powder and really sort of buff it into the skin, but without aggravating the skin, with a very firm touch. These are softer just because they're not as dense, and I think they apply the powder foundations in a less concentrated manner, therefore making them look quite a bit more natural. So these are definitely my preferred ones over maybe these two. So get the multitask brush versus the buffing brush or the expert face brush if you like the same kinds of brushes that I do. We're hitting the home stretch with these Real Techniques brushes. So this is a testament to how much I like this guy. First of all, they come in a lot of different sets that Real Techniques sells, but this is a base shadow brush. This is one of the most universally easily used brushes. It's fairly small in size, but it's used for application and diffusion of the color into the crease, onto the lid. They're pretty multifunctional, so I actually really like them. That would be my other recommendation apart from the blush brush. I think their base shadow brushes are really, really useful little things. And then what I use this guy for, this is Domed Shadow Brush. I really enjoy using this guy for application of cream shadows. I think this is really good for applying cream shadows, applying and diffusing them. So you can apply cream shadows with a paddle flat brush, but this guy is kind of fluffy, and also it's good for diffusing color. If you have stiff color that is difficult to blend out, this you can use because it is a fuller brush and it's quite easy to use. It's not a must-have for me, but it's pretty good. Another not a must-have is this accent brush. I think it's easy to find a similar small brush for accenting or doing small crease work, carving out the crease, or adding color to the outer V, or maybe going under the lash line here. I think this is easy to dupe. I don't think it's super special, but it's very functional, so if it comes in a set, I wouldn't be disappointed. This one kind of isn't the best. This is their fine liner brush. I do think it's functional again, but honestly, it does not hold up a candle to my Navi brush. I mean, just look at them. This holds together so much better, but it's doable. You can use it. It's not defective or bad, but it's just I've seen a lot better. Lip brush is fine. I don't really have particular attachment to lip brushes because they honestly kind of all feel the same to me. So their lip brush is just great. No problem there. What I do like is this one, and this is their brow brush. Why do I like it? Because it's kind of stiff, and that's what I want for a brow product application. I've used it today. It's kind of stiff, which is good because it can deposit color exactly where I want it, and it's not going to fluff it out everywhere. and it is a little bit thicker. You can see that it's a little bit thicker than some of the other ones I showed you. For instance, if we're talking about the WATIER one that I showed you earlier, look how much thicker it is, twice or maybe even 3 times thicker than the WATIER. It's very helpful when you're trying to apply product semi-quickly, and I think it yields a really, really nice result. So this is one of my favorite brow brushes, and I totally do recommend their brow brush. I think it's worthwhile. Okay, finally, we're through with Real Techniques. We can move on to other brushes. I do generally really like Ecotools, but I have to say there's some hits and misses there as well. I have a spoolie from them. A spoolie is a spoolie is a spoolie. I have this little guy, which is called Eye Lip Blur brush. And it does similar things. It does similar things to what this Ecotools one does, but not as nicely. But it's a very functional little detail work brush. I prefer it over this one from Real Techniques, which is called Accent Brush. So both of them are sort of detailed brushes. I prefer the Ecotools. They have an eyeliner brush. Let's compare it to the Real Techniques one. I prefer the Real Techniques for the brows. I've used Ecotools for the brows, it's fine. But I prefer Ecotools for the eyes, so it depends entirely on what I'm doing, is the one I'm picking. This guy is Airbrushed Finishing Brush. This is really good for finishing powder. I think out of these two, I would probably go with the Real Techniques because it's dual fiber. They're both dual fiber brushes, but this one is tapered and this one has edges. But I think I prefer the way the Ecotools feels on my face, but this one is a better shape in my opinion. I like both of them. I think they work pretty much identically. This is fantastic. This is really, really great. And the density of it really reminds me of my Ecotools brush. So these do the same thing. I do like them for either setting small areas with powder or for highlight. I think those are really beautiful highlighting brushes and they disperse color really, really nicely. And equivalent to this Ecotools one is going to be setting brush from Real Techniques. I use them both in the same exact way. I do prefer the feel of Ecotools on my face, but honestly, they're really, really, really similar. And then finally, this guy. This is pretty fun. This is Angled Crease Brush. And why I like this one is I think this is really quite functional. This is really good for applying color and for diffusing color. Again, because of this shape. As you can see, it's a angled shape. So you can really wedge the color into your crease, into your socket if you need to, but then you can turn and you can blend. So having something that is shaped in a way that you can use it in different directions and on different angles, that is very helpful for multifunctional purposes. This one I actually really, really enjoy applying and blending with. So this is a big win. This is a good find for me. I have 3 brushes from Morphe, and I gotta say, I'm not loving Morphe. I got rid of maybe 60% of the Morphe brushes I did have. I ordered a whole bunch to try, but honestly I wasn't all that impressed with quality except for this one brush. This brush is fantastic and it is Morphe M330, M330. This is a great brush. I don't know if they still make the same, because I ordered a long time ago. I don't know if they still make the same numbers, but this is such a good brush and it's well made. It's natural fibers. I think it feels like squirrel. I'm not sure that it is, but I think that it is. It feels like squirrel. It's very soft, very nicely cut. I see that the quality of the bristles is actually very good. It's a fantastic diffuser brush, good shape, very soft. So thrilled with this one. The rest of them, however, yuck. I don't even know the numbers because these came sort of without the numbers, or maybe they rubbed off. I'm not sure. I don't see the numbers on these, and these are 2 buffing brushes to buff in foundation. One of them is sort of slightly angled, and that is the one that I like more. Good for stippling in the color, sort of pressing in foundation, but honestly you can get these kinds of brushes anywhere, and these are very dense, and I think they don't do as well on my skin as some of the other brushes in my collection. For instance, the ones from Real Technique are just as dense, but I just like the shape much more. This is a sculpting brush. And even like the size of them, like Expert Face Brush is basically the same type of a brush as these are, but it's smaller and easier to get into crevices. However, on the other hand, if you're looking for brushes that are very dense, and you like that density and the big size, maybe you want to cover a larger chunk of area, these are not terrible, but these are the best brushes that I've seen from Morphe. The rest of them, either shedded or were a little loose or just didn't make sense in my collection. Anyway, this is the only really star of the show from the Morphe batch that I ordered. Then we have Quo brushes, and I have 3. I've had more. I've decluttered them prior to moving to the East Coast, but I love these. These are really quite good quality brushes, and you can get a lot for your money from Quo, I think. So I have a shadow, like sort of flat shadow brush for packing on the color, which is synthetic, I think. It's so soft that I can't even tell. And these guys are also, I think, synthetic brushes, but they're fantastic quality synthetic brushes. And honestly, these get mistaken for NARS in my kit all the time. And they're not NARS, they're Quo. I'm sure they licked it off NARS. But they're soft, they're wonderful, they don't shed. I've had this kind of a brush from NARS. I don't even remember what it's called anymore, and I didn't love it. These are better. I was so impressed with the fact that these are better. These are some of my most used, most favorite brushes in my entire collection, and I enjoy them tremendously. I totally recommend you check out Quo. These were limited edition, but they do have a decent selection of brushes in their sort of regular line, so I would say check them out because they're actually good quality brushes. And these guys are so soft. They're my favorite shape, as you can tell. Hello. Oh, my favorite shape is a tapered powder brush, basically, because these can do anything. They can powder, they can contour, they can sculpt, they can bronze, they can apply blush, they can apply highlight with the tip. It's just, these are so useful. I really like them. So it's either MAC brushes are really good quality, which I think is probably true, or somehow I lucked out and every brush from MAC that I got was great. So I have a few things here to show you. This one, which is probably a concealer brush, it is number 247. I use it for packing on glittery shadows. I wet it and just pack it right on. It's beautiful. I have two 217s. 217 is my jam. This is maybe like 5 or 6 years old. This is maybe 3 years old. These hold up, they wash up, they don't shed, they're soft enough, they're goat hair. They're not super soft, they're not the softest brush, but the thing is, I don't necessarily need the softest brush on my eyelids because I want it to be very soft to not damage the eyelid, but I want it to be stiff enough to be able to blend things out. And these are great for applying, so you can wedge things in, and for blending, so you can turn it around and give it a blend, and it's just, these are fabulous. I totally recommend those. Can't use them if you're cruelty free because they do have natural hair. This is a synthetic brush from MAC that I really enjoy for every kind of cream product, and it's 159. If you love cream products, you should invest in something like this. This 159 brush is fantastic. I've had it for a few years now, so I buff in foundation with it. I kind of paint it on, and the bristles really diffuse it for me. I don't have to work hard with it at all. It is small enough to go into all the crevices in the face that I want it to go into. Contouring, sure, no problem. Blush, sure, no problem. Highlight, sure, no problem. Easy. This is one of those like I do it all kinds of brushes, which I super appreciate in a brush. That's what I want. And then we have this Big Daddy, and this I did not think I would get as much use out of as I did. It's super, super soft, and it's this big fan brush, and you can see that it's quite dense and thick. So it's not this flimsy little fan brush that you might imagine. It's 140S, so 140S. This is so multitasking. I was super surprised to find myself using it in all kinds of different ways. First of all, I really enjoyed applying powder foundation with it in a sort of semi-diffused way, and then I would flip and I would contour with it, and I can highlight with it, and I can blush with it, and then diffuse the color and blend everything together. Just this cool shape really works well. I really enjoy shapes that make it easy for you to do a bunch of different things with your brushes, and I like this for that because the shape, it just allows you a lot of freedom and flexibility in how you use it. This is a great brush. Totally recommend that one. Last but not least are going to be e.l.f. brushes. And I have a couple of lines here. Firstly, I have these white ones. The white ones are the cheaper ones, so they're a couple bucks a piece, and I think totally worth their money. For instance, the spoolie is a spoolie is a spoolie, so who cares where you get it from? e.l.f. sells it cheaper. Let's do it. And then we have this guy. This guy surprised me. This is eyeshadow brush, and this is sort of a dense paddle shadow brush. Packs on the color wonderfully. You don't need an expensive brush to be effective. This is quite effective. Is it my favorite brush ever? No. Is it effective and works well? Yes, it's absolutely worth trying. So I think this can perform. So honestly, don't waste your money. Go for the cheap e.l.f. collection. And then we have the blending eye brush, which is pretty much identical to the black collection. So I don't know if there's much difference in price, but if there is, the white ones are usually cheaper. The packaging on the black ones is nicer. It looks more classy, so to say. This is contour brush and this is blending brush, and they're kind of the same. So in terms of the stiffness, the white one, the blending one, is a little bit softer. This one is a little bit stiffer. It's a dome shadow brush. Nothing super special. These are not my favorite, but they're fine. They work well, and if you're on a budget, that's all you need, really. Then we have Flawless Concealer Brush. If you like applying your concealer this way, this can work. I don't like applying my concealer with buffing brushes. So what I use that for is cream highlights. It's a little bit too intense for powder highlights because I think it can pick up too much product because it's fairly dense in terms of its bristle sort of shortness, and in terms of the texture, it's quite thickly packed. So for cream products, I think it's better. I don't think it's a must-have for me either. This one is one of the better buffing brushes. I'm not a huge lover of buffing brush, but certainly it's better than Morphe, and it's better than a lot of the Real Techniques brushes in terms of how it feels on the face. And I like that it's a little bit more rounded. So it's not as bluntly cut. It's a little bit more rounded. It's quite soft. It's stiff. So cream products apply quite nicely with it. And I think it's a nice blending brush if you like foundation application with this shape and this density. It's not my personal favorite, mostly because I do prefer a dual fiber application like this Real Technique dual fiber one, but this is really nice if you like that kind of application. And occasionally I do use this and I don't mind it. It works quite well. Now, the best brushes, the absolute best brushes I think that are present in their line are these, and these are called highlighter brush, highlighting brush, and blush brush. Basically they're pretty much the same. Blush brush is a little bit more sort of pinched and highlighter brush is round, but they are basically the same brush, guys. So whichever one you pick, they will work about the same way for you. They are medium density, quite fluffy, very soft, and I have a shocker for you guys because I have a dupe, my Chanel brush, my Chanel powder brush, that is. And I love my Chanel powder brush. This is a great brush, and the fact that these highlighter and blush brush from e.l.f. are not inferior to it is shocking to me and restores my faith in humanity. So the handle on the Chanel one is a little bit nicer, as it should be, but Chanel one is like 70 bucks and these are like $6. So you know what? The quality is like not at all far off. They even look the same. Look at those. They all look the same. So the Chanel one is a little bit looser. It's not as densely packed as these two are. These two virtually identical to feel. Chanel's a little bit softer, but negligibly so, not really enough to tell the difference. And honestly, if I'm feeling them, I can feel the difference. Chanel is a little bit softer. There's a little more give to the bristles. I love this brush for applying either powder. Like I said, this is my favorite shape to apply any kind of powder product. You can highlight with it, you can sculpt with it, you can sort of blush or bronze with it if you want to. So this is my favorite shape. The Chanel brush was a go-to for a while. These are not much worse. No, I'm not going to say that they're the same. They're not the same, but they're close enough of a dupe for me to call them a dupe. They even look similar. However, if I do close my eyes and I do sort of feel it out, there's a little bit of a difference. Chanel is a little bit softer, but honestly not like 65 bucks softer. Get the e.l.f. If I was to purchase this again, I wouldn't get the Chanel because the e.l.f. are virtual dupes and they perform the same exact tasks. So the e.l.f. is really good. That shape though, I love that shape of brush. So that's it. There's a lot to digest here. I certainly talked your ear off about my brushes. These are the brushes that are currently present in my collection. In the new year, I'll be adding the Wayne Goss set to my collection, and possibly when I buy that, I'm going to declutter some of these. And I think I want to film it because honestly, I basically told you which ones are not my must-haves, and they're probably the ones that are going to be going. So I need to really condense my brush collection. I know that, and I think within the next several months I'll probably do that once I get the wing gloss ones in, and probably film a video including those brushes and declutter the ones that I'm not really using all that much. I think it'll be fun to film, and I think it'll be a good thing for you guys to sort of follow up on and see how my collection is evolving. So tell me, which one is your favorite brush brand from which you're buying all the time? I'm always curious, and maybe you can open my eyes to some new brush brands that are fantastic and worthwhile. But that's it for today for me. See you guys later. Have a wonderful day. Good luck. Bye-bye.